Hey everyone, I'm Phil Albertelli, and this, of course, is The Week in Doubt, a podcast for atheists, agnostics, and whoever. And I guess we'll call this episode 356. 355 being the Lost Demogorgon episode, and 354 being the Vegetable Lamb. And so I'd like to quickly take care of some Facebook likes before we dig in. So, Ronaldo Aquino liked the Week in Doubt Facebook page. Claudette Biver, I hope that's how you pronounce it. She liked a link. And she also followed the show. Oh, thank you. Okay, Danielle Noonan liked the Week in Doubt podcast. And Mike Montague liked the Week in Doubt podcast. Okay, thanks everyone. It is greatly appreciated. And I just caught myself. I think maybe that should have been Daniel Noonan, not Danielle. Just wanted to take care of that. One less correction I'll have to make next week. Apologies if I got your name wrong, and thanks very much for the like. Okay. And there was something else I wanted to take care of before we move on to the news stories, etc. And I'll try not to dwell here for too long, because I know listening to a podcaster talk about their technical woes, etc., can be probably proved to be quite boring or tedious. But the last two episodes were really kind of plagued by technical snags, and I figured I'd just, talk about it because it would probably be cathartic for me, and in case any of you guys noticed the snags in question and wondered what was going on. So that Vegetable Lamb episode, I think I had to upload that like 3 times. And fortunately, there's this feature with Podbean, which is kind of the middleman service I use to deliver the audio version of the podcast to you guys. It's just a place that kind of hosts your RSS feed, etc. And if you change the name of a corrected file to mirror exactly what you named the original file, you can upload the new revised version of the file or episode, and it will actually just replace the old one and in theory won't cause you to lose any downloads or views or whatever. So I uploaded that Vegetable Lamb episode to Podbean, and I remember I had this real kind of almost like an existential crisis during making that episode. Maybe that's a bit hyperbolic or whatever, or maybe not, we'll see. And this is something that happens to me with almost every documentary episode I do. I've kind of made it into an ongoing joke, self-deprecatingly. But I'll find, a subject I really find interesting. Maybe it's something I've really, long been interested in, but never got around to making an episode about it. Or maybe it's something that I've just recently found out about, and it's really kind of captivated my imagination. And, I just want to kind of learn as much as I can about it, and then share what I know about the topic with you guys. And that was the case with that Tartar Lamb or Vegetable Lamb episode. As I explained at the beginning of that episode, or that mini documentary episode, I, just happened upon this subject while researching something else. I had never heard about it, but it was so weird and strange and kind of obscure that I really wanted to turn it into a mini documentary episode. And no matter how many times I go through this process, I never learn. I just keep repeating it. I'll find a little subject that interests me, and I'm like, oh, easy breezy, man. I never say easy breezy in my everyday life. What the hell is that? Anyway, I'll think, oh, I can knock this out, no problem, man. You know what I mean? And to kind of give you some insight into how the sausage is made, if it's a subject that I'm already familiar with, but I want to refresh myself on it, I'll watch old documentaries that I've seen in the past about the subject. I'll research the subject online. If I have any, physical paper books around that have something to do with the topic, I'll go through those as well. And then also, I will go to Wikipedia, but I don't use Wikipedia as a main source. What I'll usually do is sometimes you can kind of just start to put together the bare bones or outline, by referring to Wikipedia. But then I'll always end up trying to double check what Wikipedia say. I've actually found that Wikipedia is pretty damn trustworthy. I know people always kind of thumb their noses at it and kind of, scoff at the idea. And I get why some people are kind of distrustful or, lack confidence in the platform, because it is kind of scary, if you're someone who values the truth. And, it does give you pause when it's this online encyclopedia that's constantly open to, editing by who knows who, So I totally get that. But I find from personal experience that more often than not, the information is actually accurate and it proves to be a trustworthy source. But maybe part of it has to do with when I was going back to school for design. It's so bad. It's like I'm actually embarrassed to admit it, but I've told this story a number of times on the show. I had this one of my design teachers. This guy was really he kind of reminded me of a Stefan Malamute type of guy. I don't know. It's just this like kind of stern, kind of conceited, balding, middle-aged gentleman. And he could be really kind of harsh or whatever. And this is how naive I was when I went back to school. And I was new to doing online research. I was new to Wikipedia. I actually would quote list Wikipedia as a source, And I remember one time he wrote this note that said something about how he appreciated my honesty. And we know what he was trying to say. This is a bullshit source, but thanks for, being so naive as to admit that you resorted to using Wikipedia and citing Wikipedia. But in a way, I'm actually glad he did that, because I think it's better to be corrected than to keep making the, same mistake going forward. You know what I mean? But yeah, that guy was definitely a piece of work, and he really did remind me a lot in retrospect of Stefan Molyneux, or however you pronounce his name. Like I said, he was kind of stern, kind of smug, conceited. Even physically, he was a tall, kind of thin guy with, male pattern baldness, but, the remaining hair shaved really close to the skull or whatever. Well, maybe skull is the wrong term. I just pictured someone using like a deli slicer to shave their head, some kind of weird Hellraiser type of thing. But you know what I mean. And I remember there was this kind of Mutiny on the Bounty moment in this guy's class. And of course, he was kind of like the Captain Bligh or whatever. The kind of too stern a leader or whatever. And the people eventually, mutiny. It was very weird because, like I told you, I had to provide citations. And this was a design course, but oddly enough, he had us writing research papers. And usually that wasn't the case with the design courses I took. Most of the design courses I took were meant to just kind of prepare you and give you the tools that you'd need to be a designer out in the real world. Like some of the classes I took were like, I took Intro to Computer Graphics 1 and 2. Those taught you like how to use, this is how long ago it was. They had us using Quark Express. And if you know anything about design, that used to be like the leading page layout program that professional designers used. And then this happened while I was still going for my design degree. At some point, Adobe came out with InDesign, their own page layout program, and that kind of outpaced and eclipsed Quark Express. But yeah, so we learned how to use things like Adobe Illustrator, Quark, InDesign. I took electronic imaging. That taught us how to use Photoshop. took other classes that taught you how to, do package design and create mock-ups and stuff. Yeah, but he had us write a paper on the history of graphic design, I believe. And maybe it was his fault. Maybe he kind of led us in the wrong direction. But a bunch of us basically wrote papers on the history of art, starting with cave paintings onward. But in fairness, maybe, just a brief kind of history of that kind of thing, and then focusing on the development of the modern field of graphic design. But he wasn't happy with anyone's papers and basically tried to take the whole class to task for, not following directions or whatever. And there really was this kind of mutiny on the bounty thing. I remember there was one kid, just a good kind of salt-of-the-earth kid, baseball hat. I think he did some kind of manual work as his day job. And he was like a quiet kid. And he got pissed. And he was like, he took an angry tone with the teacher, totally turned the filter off, swearing or whatever. But it wasn't like just like an angry over the top rant. He was basically just expressing his frustration, saying, I thought this is what you want us to do based on whatever. And other people were like speaking up about how, that was the impression they got too, And he looked like he wasn't quite sure how to handle the situation, But it was funny. And there was a couple of weird moments between me and him specifically where I remember I could feel like his eyes on me. There was this girl who would, sit next to me. And I don't think I was necessarily flirting with her. Maybe I was on some level, but I was trying to pay her a compliment. She got a new tattoo, and it was on the back of her neck. I'm like, oh, that's a cool tattoo, And also I feel like these eyes burning on me. I look over my shoulder, and he's seated behind us, and he was in the middle of writing or something, and he just, was holding the pencil like he stopped what he was doing and just, burning a gaze right into me like he was pissed that I was daring to do anything kind of social or, attempting any kind of social interaction or whatever. And there was another time when, for like my heavy duty art class, like there was some classes where we were engaging in like a physical medium, like painting or drawing or something. So I had a big, like, an art supply box that looked like a tackle box kind of with all sort of folding trays, and I had my my like charcoal pencils, my paint brushes, all that type of stuff in there. But there were times where I didn't need the whole case, so I would just carry around like a little transparent plastic pencil case, like maybe a kid would take to school, but it wasn't, it wasn't like pink with Barney the dinosaur on it or something. It was just a transparent thing I bought from like Staples or whatever. And inside it, I had like my artist pencils, maybe a couple of brushes, some pens and pencils for taking notes and stuff. And I just he paused. I could feel once again, like he was paused. And he was looking down at my desk, and his eyes were directly on this pencil case. And he just held his gaze there, like he was kind of disapproving or was like trying to think, why the hell did this guy bring a pencil case to class? Was he a little kid? But there was weird stuff like that. Most of my art professors or whatever were really cool. Just laid back people that wanted to, down to earth people that just want to impart their knowledge of the design field onto students who are serious about wanting to become designers themselves. And they would, have you do exercises and projects that made sense, try to teach you real world skills. There's a couple other teachers that were a little, weird or off too. But yeah, I always remember that guy. It's strange. And so, yeah, I said I wasn't going to dwell long on these editing snags or whatever. But I guess in a way I didn't. I spent more time talking about, conveying personal anecdotes than I did actually talking about the snags I encountered. But anyway, I remember what led to all this. I got off on a digression about Wikipedia, and that went into this anecdote about citing Wikipedia as a source in school. But yeah, basically, I was saying I don't think there's anything wrong with using Wikipedia as like a jump off or starting point. It can kind of get a brief idea of what maybe you'd want an outline of the subject to be, but then I think it's good to always double check the citations. And if something sounds a little off to you or you're not certain, you should do your own research and make sure Wikipedia is not leading you astray. But yeah, usually when I do a topic, yeah, it's like a combination of things. I'll follow citations from Wikipedia. I'll research the topic myself online, double check things. Revisit old documentaries I've watched in the past on whatever the topic happens to be. But yeah, I was actually surprised by that. I mean, I usually don't get a lot of views on YouTube. There are some kind of outliers or exceptions. There's like my documentary on St. Patrick, my Baphomet documentary. I think the documentary I did on Aleister Crowley did fairly well. But my average, just your standard. I say standard weird, my kind of standard Week in Doubt episodes or whatever, where I cover eclectic news stories or whatever. Those usually, they don't do great view-wise. But for some reason, that vegetable lamb documentary really kind of underperformed. I think as of now, it only has like 17 views. I wonder if part of it has to do with, and I'm trying to keep it real, not be in denial here. Because like I said, I think my standard episodes really, they usually don't get many views. But I've noticed kind of like, the spooky YouTube algorithm everyone blames for everything. But I think there's truth in that. And I've heard other people complain about that, both content creators and, fans of content creators, kind of complaining that that the content from their preferred creators isn't showing up in their, recommendations or whatever on YouTube. But yeah, and I remember half joking to myself that I wonder if people saw the thumbnail and the title. The thumbnail had like, I kind of just quickly threw something together in Photoshop. It was, like an old woodcut or whatever, an old image of the Tartar lamb. And there was a fork with like salad on it in front of it. And of course, the name had vegetable right in the title. And I've been talking, and I'm very self-conscious about it. I know recently I've been talking about how I've been trying to phase animal products out of my diet, but at the same time, I'm not trying to beat people over the head or guilt them if they're, still eating meat or whatever. And I'm trying to assure people this isn't becoming a vegan channel. I was almost half jokingly, I doubt this has anything to do with it, but wondering to myself if people saw like vegetable in a fork with salad on it and they thought it was me pushing some kind of vegan content or something, when it was actually just like a little documentary on this really weird historical concept or whatever. I can't believe this. Now we're about 18 minutes in and I still haven't even touched on the specific snags or whatever, or, technical errors. But when I sit down to record an episode, I use GarageBand, which is that Apple audio program that comes with every Mac or whatever, And I was so picky originally about finding the right vocal settings that once I finally, got the desired sound, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to back off. I don't want to have to go through this whole process every time I want to record. I basically started with, there's like a default setting, or I don't know if you call it a filter or whatever it is, or preset. I have no idea. But and I was a singer in a band for years. As I like to say, I think technically I'm still in a band. We just haven't practiced in years. So you think I would know more about audio recording. But anyway, this kind of default setting called male narrator. And I just really kind of tweaked and honed that till I got it to sound good and where there wasn't, any annoying echo or anything. And that what I do is I kind of use, older episodes as templates so I don't have to redo, the kind of custom vocal setting all over again every time. So I'll just open up an old episode and I'll delete the existing audio track and just start recording from there. But the the hang up though is that if you mute a track instead of deleting it, whatever, muted audio bit of audio you have there, if it occurs down the road beyond the length of the new episode you're recording, that will be factored in to the length of the file. And so to give you a specific example, that vegetable lamb documentary, that was fairly short, maybe like 15 minutes long. And as I always say, those documentary episodes, despite taking more time to create due to all the research, writing a script or whatever, they always end up being the shortest. Because once everything's condensed down to a nice, polished, concise script, the only thing left to do is sit down and read it. And, because there's no ums and ahs and because you're not thinking out loud while you go, you're just reading a script, they end up being pretty short. And so unfortunately, the old show I was using as a template was, one of my rambling unscripted episodes. And it was probably something like 50 minutes in length. And at the very end of it was a little bit of outro music, bumper music or whatever, that was muted. So even though it was muted, it still got figured into the length of the Tartar Lamb episode. So if you listen to the original upload of that, the episode may have stopped at like 15 minutes in after I'd, finished reading the script, but there was probably dead air that went on for like another 45 minutes or whatever. So when I recognized that, I went in, edited out that little muted bit of outro music and re-uploaded it. And then what happened next was, as I usually do, I imported the audio into iMovie so I could start adding visuals, for the YouTube version. And this has happened before. I listened back to the audio so I can place the proper visuals where they should go, to complement whatever it is, I'm talking about or whatever. And I was listening back to a bit of the script where I was talking about Alexander the Great and his generals and how supposedly two men who served under him had commented on, trees in the ancient world, in India specifically, that seemed to grow wool. You know what I mean? And I've mentioned, I think recently on an episode, I mentioned how I used to be really into Alexander the Great, and I even read the campaigns of Alexander and things like that. And in the script, I had referred to both men as generals, and in fairness to myself, I guess, I was taking a cue from a 19th century book on the Tartar Lamb that I was citing. And I knew something wasn't sitting right with me, so I went back and researched it. And I guess in a way, it might have been all right to refer to both men as generals, but technically the first man, I believe it's Aristobulus. Hopefully I'm not butchering that. I don't know if you can technically call him a general. He was possibly a friend of Alexander's father, Philip of Macedon, but he's also described as being a friend of Alexander himself. And I don't know if there's some confusion because I think he was his father was also named Aristobulus. But anyway, he was he's described as accompanying or traveling with Alexander during his campaigns, and he served as kind of an architect and military engineer, that kind of thing. So I don't know if he necessarily bore the title of general or whatever the ancient Greek equivalent would have been. And then the other man is Nearchus, I believe. And you could call him a general, but technically he was what we would now call an admiral. He led the naval forces. And an admiral is kind of like, I was about to say the aquatic equivalent of a general, but you know what I'm trying to say. So I went back in, re-recorded that bit, and was a bit more specific, and then re-uploaded the episode again. So if you perhaps listened to that episode twice and noticed it was different the second time around, no, it wasn't the Mandela effect. It was just me being picky and wanting to be as accurate as possible. Then concerning that Demogorgon episode, it's funny, I was kind of, like half-jokingly, self-deprecatingly thinking to myself, only I could do this. I took an episode that I was revisiting so I could correct some errors and, offer some clarifications. And somehow I came out with additional errors or whatever, I'm thinking, only I could do this, you know what I mean? But in this case, I'm going to go a little easy on myself and place a portion of the blame on iMovie. There's something about iMovie, especially if you're recording inside it, adding new audio to the movie as you edit it. It becomes like this Jenga or sliding puzzle thing from hell. Like you move one thing and everything else gets like shuffled. And sometimes you're not aware of it, but if you revisit, earlier parts that you've already recorded, sometimes you'll find weird spaces and things are switched around and aren't sequenced properly, So I upload the thing to YouTube and I decide to watch it for quality control. I think I was actually playing Conan Exiles. And while I was playing it, I had the volume down. I decided to watch, I had my phone standing up on the computer desk. And I decided I'll watch the video, for quality control. And after the initial introduction where I state that, I'm going to jump in and correct things as we go, all of a sudden there's this weird pause that's like over a minute long. And I'm like, please tell me that's just some temporary hiccup or like maybe an ad that's loading or something. But no, I knew when I first edited it that, that pause, that weird awkward silence was not there. So I went back into iMovie, and what happened is I was recording the audio of my commentary where, I wanted to step in and offer, a correction or a clarification. And at some point, recording that new bit just slid everything out of place. And I ended up with that awful space, near the beginning of the episode. And I actually went in and fixed it in iMovie. Then I'm thinking, oh man, this is going to take forever to re-upload. I'm going to have to edit in all the tags all over again and all that stuff. So I'm like, let me try the editor feature in YouTube's, Creator Studio, whatever. And I eventually got the hang of it enough that I was able to edit out that space. So that worked. Well, all right. So it only took me about a half an hour to get around to the news stories. All right, so once again, this is obviously an unscripted episode. And so I have my notes app open here on my iPad. And over the past week, I've just kind of curated or collected news stories that caught my interest. And you guys know me, I lean politically left, but I usually try not to get too political on the show. Unless I'm dealing with something like a separation of church and state issue, or tackling some tomfoolery from the Christian right. You know what I mean? But actually, during this whole lockdown thing, I've kind of been avoiding the news for the most part. Maybe like a lot of people, I'm just sick of hearing about the whole COVID-19 thing. And to be honest, I've said this before on the show that I used to listen to a lot of political podcasts and I used to watch nightly cable news and stuff like that. But after Donald Trump won the presidency, I just had to take a step back from politics. I mean, don't get me wrong, I wasn't like falling to my knees in the street and crying to the heavens because Donald Trump won. I just couldn't believe it happened. I'm like, really? Really? And I don't want to get sidetracked with all that. I mean, we could get into a whole discussion about what were the factors that actually allowed Donald Trump to get elected? What did the left and the right do wrong to allow this guy to step into that power vacuum or whatever? But like I said, I try not to get too political, most of the time. But yeah, after Donald Trump won, I'm just like, I just, yeah, it was kind of like the feeling when you stuff yourself and then like you're so full you almost feel sick, and if someone offers you more you just have to like wave them off. I was kind of like that, in the sense that it was bad enough, that whole kind of train wreck of an election, or of an election season, then it culminating in Donald Trump actually being elected president. I'm like, I can't take it. I can't, listen to, Anderson Cooper 360 podcast or whatever, I usually listen to on the way to and home from work and hear Trump, 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 Trump. You know what I mean? I just got to take a step back and just distance myself from politics. I'll lose my mind if I just keep on hearing about President Donald Trump day in, day out. You know what I mean? And I said I wasn't going to get political, but maybe I am a little, because now we have to wonder if this is going to be a repeat of the last election season, So it seemed to me, like I said, I wasn't going to talk about this, but what went wrong the last time is that both sides tried running establishment candidates, stuffed suits that, everyone was sick of. And, then there was the DNC kind of, giving Bernie the shaft. And now this time around, once again, I was rooting for Bernie Sanders. And, good old Uncle Joe Biden, just steps right in. I think I might just want this job. And I think I spoke about this before, but I actually used to really like Joe Biden, and I could be somewhat naive. I didn't start to really become kind of cognizant or aware of politics in general till probably after 9/11. And I don't know if that's partly coincidence. Maybe I was just maturing a bit and was kind of getting into politics anyway, or gaining an interest in politics. Or I don't know if it was like 9/11 was just like a big wake-up call that made me feel like I needed to be more mindful about what was, playing out on the world stage and politics at home and abroad, But in general, yeah, I used to like Joe Biden, and I don't know if this is a bad habit or if it's a bad thing or not. I imagine you should probably try to strike a balance between, the kind of gut feeling you develop about someone as a person, and also trying to objectively look at their policies and their track record. And but I used to have a kind of habit of just going with my gut feeling about a politician, and I used to like Joe Biden because he just seemed like, just like your average good-hearted guy. He seemed sincere, and I used to be really moved, and I guess in a way I still am, by his personal story. Just all the personal tragedies he's endured, family members he's lost and all that. But as cold as it might sound, I feel like that can only take you so far. And eventually, the sentimentality is going to wear thin, and your gaffes and blunders, past kind of unpopular political stances, all that stuff's going to catch up with you. You know what I mean? And now, on top of it, there's these allegations, very kind of Trumpian or Trump-like sexual misconduct allegations being, leveled at Biden. And if what he's being accused of is true, I mean, it's really vile stuff. His accuser is basically, I don't even know if I should go into it. It's pretty graphic, you know what I mean? But he forced himself on this woman, and I guess his idea of making a pass is, forcibly digitally penetrating someone against their will. So just really gross, nasty, awful stuff. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. I wasn't there, thankfully. But my kind of gallows humor. I just can't help but think about how the battle for the presidency is going to come down to these two senile, demented, geriatric people, both with sexual misconduct allegations against them, one from either side of the political aisle, battling it out. It's very odd. Rock'em Sock'em Robots Geriatric Sex Offender Edition. It's weird, wild stuff. Yeah, it sucks. So I think a lot of people feel the way I do. I was really pulling for Bernie Sanders. And I hope, I make these jokes about, Trump and Biden being geriatric. And that's not me, I like to think I'm not ageist. I don't care how old someone is if they're, the right person for the job. And Bernie, I think Bernie's at least as old as they are, right? But he was still as sharp as a tack. I admire Bernie Sanders both for his mind and for his, what I think, his integrity, his seeming sincere desire to want to do what's best for his fellow citizens. You know what I mean? And like I said, I'm someone who leans left. I'm someone who believes in a social safety net and that kind of thing. So in that sense, like Bernie Sanders seemed like the perfect candidate for me. And both times, kind of had the rug pulled out from under him. But the reason why I kind of digressed onto the topic of politics is because, like I said, during this whole lockdown thing, I've been trying not to watch the news too much. But I did happen to have the news on just kind of in the background earlier. I can't remember if the way these lockdown days just blur together. I can't remember if it was earlier today or yesterday. But I was watching coverage of these kind of lockdown protests. And I have to admit, I'm having trouble wrapping my head around this whole thing, like lockdown protests. I think on a couple of different levels. On a really personal level, I've obviously, I've regaled you guys with stories of my ventures into the outside world, having too much to drink or whatever. I mean, but I'm also, I'm kind of wired to be something of an introvert. So on the one hand, I'm like, wait, you mean I get to stay at home without the social stigma of being an introvert? And, and in that sense, in certain ways, my life hasn't changed that much. And I'm even like, I don't know if I should be talking about this, but, well, I've mentioned it on the show before that I've basically been temporarily laid off now for like 3 or 4 weeks. Right around the time all this started, it's when everyone was talking about COVID, but there was no official lockdowns or anything yet. My brother and I were supposed to start a kitchen remodel in a nearby town. We were pretty much all set to go. And then, they decided that only essential work was going to be allowed. And they kind of put the kibosh temporarily on, residential building projects and things like that. I talked about that kind of ominous moment. It almost felt like something out of a sci-fi movie. I was on my way to the job site, traveling on the highway, and it kind of reminded me of The Walking Dead. It's like there's almost no one else on the highway. And I'm almost there, and I get this call from my brother, and he has like a really serious tone. And he's like, Phil, you should just turn around. They're locking it down. They're locking it all down. Go home and file for unemployment as soon as you get home. I'm like, whoa, you know what I mean? So anyway, it's like, I really don't like talking about my personal probably because I don't make that much money. I mean, to keep it real, that's mostly why I don't like talking about my personal finances. And yeah, I don't know if I should be mentioning this, but and I think a lot of people are in the same boat. Where at first, before I heard about the federal assistance to state unemployment, I was like, man, I am going to be screwed because regular unemployment provided you by the state is like a fraction of what you usually make. And I wasn't making that much anyway. And on top of it, just the nature of the construction, home remodeling business, you have each week you have different hours, and I get paid hourly. So you never know exactly what you're going to take home. And so then they added this additional 600 from the federal government, to kind of help shore up unemployment. And so there's some weeks with, since I've been on unemployment, that I've actually been making more than I probably would have otherwise. So in a way, I'm like, wait, I get to stay at home, just I have time to think, time to work on personal projects, time to be creative. And I'm sometimes making more money than I would have made when I'm physically at work. I'm like, not too shabby. In a way, it sounds like too good to be true, or it sounds like, you're milking the government teat or whatever. But in a way, it's like, I feel like they had to implement things like this or they'd be screwed, I mean, there's a lot of people who already worked from home, or they do kind of white collar work and they could easily transition to working at home. I mean, but for people whose work requires them to be out in the world and, people are doing physical labor and stuff like that. I mean, can you imagine if people were just trying to scrape by on the scraps that regular unemployment offers you? And I mean, because unemployment has gone through the roof. I mean, the economy would just tank. They had to do something from keeping everything from collapsing, They had to at least shore up unemployment so that people would at least stand a chance of being able to pay their rent and get through, get through week by week, month to month until this thing is resolved. And, I think it was Ben from the Drunken Peasants who was saying, when this all started, that, if you're temporarily laid off because of this pandemic, don't feel ashamed. Don't feel bad. You've been paying into that for years, and this is what it's meant for. You know what I mean? In a sense, it's kind of like, disaster relief. And so I'll say this, and this just kind of occurred to me while I was talking about all this. If part of why these people protesting the lockdowns are upset, I know there might be some people who were in a position where they couldn't file for unemployment, or maybe, you're the boss and you have this job and you're watching your job go down, the business you've built up, go down the drain because of this, I could see being angry then. I could see wanting an end to the lockdown. But if you're someone who has a job that allows you to work from home, or if you're financially secure for the time being, or, you're able to get by via this kind of, the kind of government relief I was mentioning, this kind of, beefed up version of unemployment. And it's funny, unemployment does come with a stigma. And like I said before, only one other time in my life, I've been working since I got out of high school. Only one other time in my life did I ever have to resort to unemployment. And that was during the big kind of crash or whatever of that recession of 2008. And that was very briefly. But I agree with Ben from the Drunken Peasants. It's not something you should feel ashamed of. It's not your fault that, there's a global pandemic, impacting everyone. And, we do pay into these government systems so that when the time comes when we need it, need that assistance, it's there. And so I do know that those increased unemployment benefits, or was it the one time stimulus, the 1,200, or is it both? I don't know. But if you're above, if you're in the bracket above 75,000 a year, um, I think you don't get those benefits. I think it's just for people below 75,000 a year, and yes, I am in that bracket. uh, yes, unfortunately. Um, so I don't know, like these people protesting the lockdown. That's what I'm trying to think. Are these people who are personally being financially impacted? Are these like small business owners? Are these people for some reason who can't apply for these temporary unemployment, COVID unemployment benefits? What's it? Why are they so angry? And I'm wondering, are these? And I don't want to be too politically divisive here, but are these kind of pro-Trump kind of Tea Party type people who I just sound like Al Pacino and I was gonna say Rain Man. That was Scent of a Woman, right? Yeah, but I think that's the crux of it. Are they angry, justifiably so, because maybe their livelihoods are going down the drain because of the way they've been impacted by all this? Or are they, kind of financially all right, but they're just pissed because the government ain't gonna tell me to stay home? These kind of, it's funny. There's a lot of kind of millennial or Generation Z kind of slang that I don't really, like or that I find a little cringy. But there is one term I love, and it's LARPing. And I feel like LARPing is great because it conveys a lot within, just one word or term. And LARPing, is an acronym for live action role playing, and I think it has its start in like, these people who kind of engage in these kind of, these live versions of role playing games like Dungeons and Dragons where you wear costumes and go into the woods or whatever. And often people use the word LARPing to refer to people who kind of melodramatically take themselves too seriously or try to pretend to be something they're not to make their lives more interesting. So, yeah, I don't know what's motivating these people. I mean, once again, not to sound like a broken record, I definitely have sympathy for them if they have been, really impacted financially by this whole COVID thing. But I don't know, some of them, are they actually, they're all right financially for the time being? Maybe some of them are even bored retirees, maybe they got a fat pension or, receive a social security check, but they just want to go out there and LARP as Braveheart and, rage about how they're not going to let the government keep them at home. And if that's the case, I'm like, come on, man. It's like I can still go to the post office. I can still go, grocery shopping, albeit, it is kind of a weird experience going out there where everyone's wearing the masks and, the parts of the supermarket are roped off and everything. But you can still do that. You can still have gatherings, visit friends and have was it you're not supposed to have any gatherings more than 10 people at a time, but you could probably still have small little parties or whatever, or little gatherings. I mean, what do you miss going out to, physically going out to see a movie or going out to a restaurant? To be honest, like I actually couldn't give a shit about that stuff. So I'm like, wait, I can still have food delivered to me. I can still sit at home and watch movies in the comfort of my own home or whatever, and in my Calvin Klein boxer briefs or whatever they are. Too much information. But, I'm like, who cares? Who cares, man? So are these people who are kind of LARPing like they're the brave militia and this is a big version of Ruby Ridge or something, out of my cold dead hand, whatever. It's like, I don't know. Are these people who are so conspiratorial that maybe they doubt the very existence of the virus and they think this is finally, the globalists, the elites, or just, our own corrupt government finally, making the move to, subjugate us all and send us all to FEMA camps or whatever, I don't know. But and it's weird because you definitely see some cognitive dissonance because you'll see these people violently and I don't mean violently physically. I don't think, in fairness to them, I haven't heard of too many instances of this really getting physical, But, I mean, the people really passionately protesting the lockdown. And yet many of them are still wearing masks and maybe gloves, So it's like you seem to be acknowledging that the virus is an actual threat. Or maybe you have enough doubts that you realize, it's best to be smart and, take precautions. And yet you're protesting this the lockdown or whatever you call it, these kind of precautionary measures, which could help protect you, yourself, your loved ones, your neighbors. And once again, despite the fact that you realize there's enough of a threat that you should be wearing a mask, you're still trying to force the government's hand to lift these precautionary measures, which could make the situation a whole lot worse, And I mentioned the protesters wearing masks, but there's also, abundance of them who aren't wearing masks or gloves or whatever, which seems so kind of selfish and myopic to me, because it's like, okay, even if you don't care about your own health, you do realize that you could be putting other people, including your own loved ones, at risk. You know what I mean? And the mask isn't just to protect you. It's to protect other people from, your spittle and your nasal discharge or whatever, It's like, come on, man. And it's funny, I've been rambling about this, but it was actually just a short little snippet I saw that made me want to talk about all this. So I was walking by the TV and I see this guy. He looks like a middle-aged guy being interviewed. I don't know, he might have been like 40s, 50s. No mask or anything like that. And he's being interviewed by a reporter. And he's kind of defiantly saying that his health and whether or not he gets sick is in God's hands. And that pisses me off so much. And once again, it just seems so kind of selfish or whatever. So I think LARPing might come in handy again. So this guy's LARPing like someone who's, traveling under the aegis of his own personal creator God or whatever, who thinks he's so special that God will shield him from the sickness or whatever, and to hell with everyone else. It's like, yeah, I get it. Well, actually, I don't get it. But you have the need to believe in a higher power, I don't know, it gives you a sense of comfort or a sense of purpose, or helps you deal with the stark reality of your own, inevitable mortality, or whatever it is. You got to need to believe in some higher power. It's like, are you really going to put other human beings' lives, their physical well-being or whatever, at risk? And for what? So you can smugly walk around proclaiming how you're under Sky Daddy special protection or whatever, to put it crudely. And I'm not trying to disparage all religious people, because I know there are plenty of rational religious people who, it's probably some compartmentalizing going on there, but they're rational in the sense that, they still recognize that there are serious medical threats in this world and real medical concerns. And there's even a lot of religious, doctors and healthcare professionals. So you can be Christian or you can be religious and still realize that we need to protect ourselves from, contagions. You know what I mean? I think there's been over 60,000 COVID-19 deaths here in the States. And I think one person put it kind of powerfully that we've now lost more people to COVID than we did, in the Vietnam War. And this guy, what would he say to all those people who've died? What would he say to their loved ones? Were they not good enough to merit God's protection? You know what I mean? So anyways, now it's 53 minutes in. Time to finally move on to... Didn't I say that like 20 minutes ago? I was moving on to the news stories. So this is what I posted to the Weekend Out Facebook page, and it's from the Friendly Atheist, and it's actually by Hemant Mehta himself. And it's entitled, E.W. Jackson, Atheists Reject a God They Can't See, So Why Do They Fear a Virus? Galaxy Brain. And this is dated April 28th. During a Facebook live stream on Sunday, right-wing radio host and former candidate for Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, E.W. Jackson, mocked atheists for rejecting God because they can't see him, while believing in a virus they also can't see. And let's see, there's some an embedded video here. And this is just going to go through my microphone, so it's probably going to sound kind of tinny.
Think about the irony of this. I've had people say things like this to me, usually in comments after I put out some live stream event or something like that. Here's what they'll say. You got fools who believe that some imaginary man in the sky that they can't see is going to protect them. And yet, they'll crawl off into a corner cringing over a virus that they can't see.
Got him. At least that's what he's thinking. But I don't want to steal anyone else's thunder, but I think a few different people commented on that post on the Week in Doubt Facebook page. And I think one person just simply wrote microscopes or something like that. Yes, we can actually see a virus using a microscope. And God, not so much. But here's another one from the Friendly Atheist, and this is actually dated to the same day, April 28th. Why did my voice just get really low right then? It was like the opposite of the Peter Brady effect. Let's see. And this one's entitled Self-Described Prophet. Even when my predictions are wrong, they're still true. Pastor Jeremiah Johnson, a self-described prophet, who said earlier this month that Dr. Anthony Fauci was a big rat sent by Satan to thwart Donald Trump, made a remarkable comment during a live stream Sunday. He explained that he once got a sign from God that a certain businessman would become a millionaire. Instead, the man went bankrupt. What does that mean? It means the prophecy was true. And then I actually read through this earlier. It just goes on, kind of elaborating on how this guy attempts to twist things in his favor, Maybe I'll read a little more. Years ago, I prophesied to a man in a meeting. I got his name. The Lord showed me a large business. He was gonna become a multimillionaire. I mean, tremendous. I mean, it was probably like the greatest prosperity, unintelligible in brackets, I ever gave. I mean, I could have preached with the best of them. This came on me. He called the office 5 days later and said, "You're a false prophet. My company just went bankrupt. Now listen to what I've been teaching you today by the word of God." I said, "Brother, I actually believe now, after what you've told me, that was the word of the Lord. I measure prophetic accuracy on how much warfare follows it." And so it continues. I said, I'm now convinced that is the word of the Lord, because now it's getting tested. Now God is going to strip you down and humble you. Was God the Iron Sheik? What's wrong with me? Anyway, now God is going to strip you down and humble you and really see where your heart's at. Can you really steward those millions? So basically he's saying, if his prophecy comes to pass, it's true. And if it doesn't come to pass, it's also true. So he wins either way. That's convenient. And I'm trying to see what other stories in my notes here I want to tackle. There's one that maybe, it merits at least reading the title, but it might be just like too depressing to even go into, It says a Christian school hired an alleged sex predator without telling anyone. Yeah, is anyone surprised by that? And here's another one that's, really depressing. But I feel like I owe it to the person at the center of the story to at least, mention what's happening to them. I don't know the person personally, but I admire what they're trying to do. So this one's also dated to April 28th, and it's entitled, Nigerian Police Arrest Humanist Leader Mubarak Bala for Alleged Blasphemy. Earlier today, Nigerian police arrested Mubarak Bala, president of the Humanist Association of Nigeria, for quote-unquote blasphemy after he allegedly posted criticism of Islam on his Facebook page. This is the same Bala who was placed in a mental hospital in 2014 for the quote-unquote crime of being an atheist. I think I remember that story. He was later released, but that didn't stop the threats on his life. Today's arrest apparently stems from a petition sent to local police, saying that Bala characterized the Prophet Muhammad, PB and JB upon him, as a terrorist. We therefore humbly lodge this complaint to you with the hope that said Mubarak Bala will be brought to book so that he will know and understand that Nigeria is not a lawless society. Let me read that again. Mubarak Bala will brought to book. I don't know if there's a typo in there or if I'm missing something. Mubarak Bala will brought to book so that he will know and understand that Nigeria is not a lawless society. And that's the end of that quote. And so I believe this one was written by, it's written by Hemant Mehta too. So this is his commentary. Let's see. To be clear, Nigeria's constitution guarantees freedom of religion and expression. His comments didn't block anyone from practicing or expressing their faith. The problem is that Nigeria doesn't even care about its own constitution in these cases. Despite promoting religious freedom, the Constitution also allows Nigerian states to create Sharia courts. Under Sharia law, blasphemy is punishable by death. And then it goes on to say that the person who chairs the board of trustees for the Humanist Association of Nigeria said he's worried about what could happen to Bala. All of us at the Humanist Association of Nigeria are deeply worried by the arrest and detention of our president, Mubarak Bala. Mubarak Bala will likely be handed over to the Kano State Police Command that will prosecute him for blasphemy, a crime that carries a death sentence under Sharia law. The Center for Inquiry, which runs an international assistance program for activists called Secular Rescue, released this statement. And the statement in full looks rather long, but there is a tweet here. The Center for Inquiry and its program to protect and lend assistance to atheist activists around the world, Secular Rescue, strongly condemned the arrest today of Mubarak Bala, president of the Humanist Association of Nigeria. He is currently being detained at the Gabasawa. I don't know. I hope I didn't. This is a serious topic. I hope I didn't butcher that, though. Police station in Kaduna, Nigeria, after he was taken into custody at his home. So just really horrible and really concerning stuff. Oh, and I actually really like this part of the statement. The Center for Inquiry supports and defends freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, freedom to criticize religion and dogma, and freedom of religious choice, including the choice not to be religious. We condemn in the strongest possible terms the arrest of Mubarak Bala and call for his immediate release. People deserve protection, not beliefs. Ideas don't need rights. People do. So that's awesome. I actually have the chills. I agree wholeheartedly with that. Okay, so I've been going at this for a while. There is one last thing I want to cover. And so I remember in the early days of the show, I used to cover Bill Maher segments on the show, from Real Time with Bill Maher all the time. I kind of fell out of habit. At one point, the show went on hiatus or whatever, and then I just, for some reason, fell out of the habit of watching it. But I happened to find this clip on YouTube, and I know I said, I'm trying to reassure you guys, I'm not trying to push veganism on you, but I thought this was interesting because here was Bill Maher, someone I used to cover on the show all the time, and he happened to be expressing his thoughts on the Wuhan, is that it? The Chinese wet markets and the zoonotic origins of, so many of our illnesses. And so I figured I'd just play it and, you guys can decide for yourselves what you think of what he has to say. All right, here it is.
Stop trying to get me to watch Tiger King. It's not going to happen. I already have to watch one bottle blonde from reality TV. And the other reason I'm not watching Tiger King while sequestering, because torturing animals is what got us into this mess. That's the lesson we keep refusing to learn, that you can't trash the environment, including animals, and not have it come back and kill you. 2 weeks ago, I called out China for reopening their wet markets, and miraculously, people from both sides of the aisle reached out to say, good for you for saying that. Well, here's another hot take that may not be as popular. America's factory farming is just as despicable as a wet market and just as problematic for our health. Factory farms have a lot more lobbyists, but ecological time bombs tick the same. Americans should not get too high and mighty about wet markets while we are doing this. Most, if not all, infectious diseases are zoonotic, meaning they start in animals and jump to humans. AIDS likely came from primates. Someone butchered a monkey or fucked one or something they shouldn't have been doing with a monkey. Mad cow came from cattle, eating cattle, which is like feeding a chicken an omelet. Just 2 weeks ago, a fatal strain of bird flu was confirmed in a commercial turkey flock in South Carolina. Now, to thwart the coronavirus, we've been told to create distance, avoid others who are sick, lower stress, and exercise. Are you surprised that diseases flourish among animals when they're forced to live in conditions that are the complete opposite of all of that? They're on top of each other, they can't move, they're stressed out. I've seen airports treat luggage better than we treat animals. Egg-laying hens are starved and given no water for weeks to shock their bodies into molting. Beaks of chickens are removed. I could go on. Have you ever driven by a high-density feedlot? Yeesh. To get relief from the stench, you have to stick your nose in an egg salad sandwich. If you think the market in Wuhan is gross, you should visit one of our giant poultry processing factories. But of course you can't, because we have ag-gag laws that make it a crime to report the crime. And it is a crime of animal abuse that goes on in our food industry. You're worried that the mailman has coronavirus? 80% of pigs have pneumonia when they're slaughtered, because we make them live in conditions that would make a zombie vomit, and then, so they don't die before we kill them, pump them full of antibiotics that in turn get passed on to humans. That in turn leads to antibiotic-resistant diseases, that in turn leads to us dying from ever-evolving contagions. It's 6 degrees of tainted bacon. We're on the cusp of returning to a pre-antibiotic era, where strep throat was a death sentence. Let me put it as basically as I can. If we keep producing food the way we do, you're going to get sick with something medicine cannot fix. You don't have to care for the sake of the animals. I wouldn't want to mess with anyone's reputation as a heartless asshole. But do it because animal cruelty leads to human catastrophe. Do it because barbecue is why you've been masturbating for a month. And get the fuck away from me with Tiger King. I don't care that he sees the light at the end. So did Darth Vader. There's no such thing as keeping a wild animal pent up, but treating them well. Just ask Siegfried in What Remains of Roy. Joe Exotic is in prison partly for killing 5 endangered tigers, which are endangered because of people like him. I don't get why the woke left loves this show so much and isn't on this guy like pink sequins. People should take their meandering outrage and focus it on this issue. You keep animals in cages, be they tigers or turkeys, and look who winds up being the prisoner.
And I know I said I'd let you guys make up your own minds, and of course you can and will, but I just wanted to say upon listening to that back, I thought that was awesome. I thought that was pretty damn good. And oh yeah, so I was going to say the Tiger King thing. Ever since I was a kid, I had this weird rebellious anti-bandwagon kind of thing going on. Whenever I see everyone saying how great something is and hopping on the bandwagon, I automatically, maybe it's like a juvenile reflex or something, you know, but I always kind of buck the trend or whatever. So, no, I haven't seen The Tiger King. I probably won't bother watching it or whatever. I remember, it's funny, because I'm a Drunken Peasants fan, and they used to play clips of that guy back in the day. And so I've already seen clips of the quote-unquote Tiger King, Joe Exotic, or whatever he was. And I thought he was no better than any of the other kind of goofy characters, that they lampooned and, made fun of on the show. I have no desire to watch a whole series based on that guy. But with that being said, I guess I'll call this episode a wrap. As always, thanks for listening, everyone. You guys know the drill. You can like the Facebook page. You can follow the show on Twitter. You can check out the YouTube channel. If you want to support the show monetarily, you can go to patreon.com/theweekendOut and support what I do here for as little as 99 cents a month. All right, brothers and sisters, until next time.